Well, the 2021 wildfire season is well underway. You can see that just based on the satellite imagery here, where you can see a large amount of smoke coming off the Bootleg Fire up here in Oregon. All of that smoke is finding its way all the way up into Idaho and Montana. You can also see a large amount of smoke coming off of the Dixie Fire here in Northern California. You can also see some of the smoke from the Beckwourth Complex and the River Fire here in Central California. So these are going to be some of the main fires that we're diving into throughout the day today. And just overall snapshot of the satellite imagery, you can see these fires are pretty active right now. With a number of them, both the Beckwourth Complex is now over 100,000 acres and the fire in Oregon is over 200,000. So before we really dive into these fires, let's just do a quick snapshot of the main fires that we're going to be looking at. You can see the Bootleg Fire up here in Oregon. If we click there, it should be able to tell us how many acres it is at some point here. And it's not popping up. That one is 200,000 acres though, and at about 7% containment. Hopefully we have better luck clicking on another one of these fires. The Salt incident, that one is 12,000 acres northwest as well, where you can see over 85% of California is into that extreme drought category. And something interesting you notice on this map is where you see that bright red color, which represents extreme drought, that is often where we're talking about these fires. For the Bootleg Fire in Oregon, the Dixie Fire around Paradise, the Beckwourth Complex, all of those fires are in that extreme drought category. And the main reason why that is because if you don't get a lot of rainfall, then the fuels get dry, and you can actually see how dry the fuels are on the fuel moisture map in Oregon, Northern California, much of the Sierra stretching into Central California. You can see the amount of moisture in our 100-hour fuels. That basically just means fuels that are about the size of your wrist. The fuel moisture is less than 5%, which is critically dry and is actually record low fuel moistures for this time of the year. You can see that best looking at the fuel moisture maps that is put forward by San Jose State Fire Weather Research Laboratory. I actually help collect the data that goes into these charts, and I know that looks like a lot of information to look at first, so we'll just zoom in on one of these. This is sampling the chamise plant in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and that green line there is the average fuel moisture values for this time of the year. The red line is the record low fuel moistures that we've recorded in the past, going all the way back to 2009, and that blue line there is how low the fuel moistures are right now. So you can see fuel moisture right now is below the record lows since this data set even began by the San Jose State Fire Weather Research Lab. And I know other fire weather researchers are seeing very similar results, record low fuel moistures, and that's really what has set the stage for this fire season, because the drier the fuels are, the easier it is for fires to start, and then once those fires start, the easier it is for those fires to spread. Now, what more recently led to these fires popping up were those two major heat waves that we've had over the last 2 weeks. You'll remember that one massive heat wave that was in the Pacific Northwest, where we had 115 degree temperatures in places like Portland, Oregon, 100 over triple digits in places all the way as north as Seattle, and that really set the stage for these fires to start. And then we actually had a smaller heat wave about a week ago where much of California was around 115 degrees. Now, there's good news and bad news in the weather forecast. You can see that most of this heat is farther into the southwest, more over parts of Utah and Arizona. You see that ridge right there. That represents where the heat is. And what's actually been helping us with our fires the last few days is this slight troughing pattern and this cold air that you've been seeing moving into Washington and Oregon. That's actually been what's allowed firefighters to get some great containment over these fires over the last couple of days, especially like the Beckwourth Complex, where we're up over 50%. It's because of that trough that moved in, cooled our temperatures down just a little bit. We were no longer 115, we were more like 100. So good news and bad news moving forward. The bad news, I would say, is that high pressure system over Utah and Arizona, that is going to strengthen. So we are going to see some rise in temperatures this weekend for California. I'm not predicting any kind of heat wave. It's not looking like we're going to be up 110, 115 degrees, but we will be a few degrees warmer than we are right now, and still just slightly warmer than average in some of the parts where we have our fires. But you can see majority of that heat is actually going to be finding its way up into Montana and Wyoming. We're actually expecting some triple-digit temperatures up in Montana for a number of days. So I'm actually going to have to watch Montana to see if any wildfires pop up there. But you can see where we have those fires in Oregon and California. We're kind of split between this extreme heat over places like Montana and Wyoming, and then that cold air moving into places like northwestern Washington. So I would say that kind of just puts us in the little Goldilocks zone between those. We're not too hot, but we're also not so cool that all the fires are just going to go out. We're slightly warmer than we are right now. So to see that another way, we can look at the temperature anomaly map. This basically shows how much warmer you are than what it should be on that day. And I think right here basically sums it up. You can see up into Montana, we're about 10 to 20 degrees above average temperatures. Where we get into Oregon and California, we might be maybe 4 or 5 degrees above average, but certainly not the 40 degrees above average like we saw in both of those heat waves. And then you can actually see some of that cold air working into Washington where we're actually below average. So that kind of sets the stage. Slightly warmer temperatures this weekend, but certainly not one of those massive heat waves that we've been seeing over the last 2 weeks. Now, if we look at the winds, that's actually been the major factor that's been affecting the fires, especially in California over the last few days. The predominant wind direction has been from the southwest. So that's actually been one of the major factors that has helped us out with the Dixie Fire, because it's been blowing the flames and the major fire front away from our larger cities and towns like Paradise or Concow. So these winds have actually been helping us, and it's also good to see that they're not 50 or 60 miles per hour, and they're coming from the ocean, which is better because it brings just a little bit more moisture, a little bit cooler air, whereas when we get those north winds, that's where we get those major wildfires, where it's bringing in very dry, hot air into some of these fire areas. So winds, I would say that is one of the factors driving fire growth in the afternoons, where we do get some gusts around 30 miles per hour, but wind-wise, I would say it's better than the alternative where it's 50 miles per hour and blowing in a direction that brings warmer, drier air. So what you also notice with those winds is, since they're mostly blowing from the southwest, you can see why that smoke is drifting up towards the northeast. So if we actually want to look at an air quality forecast, that's what we're forecasting for today. You can see moderate air quality throughout much of California. As you get to the Oregon border, that's where we get into the unhealthy category, where we're mixing some of that smoke drifting north from the Dixie Fire and some of that smoke just sitting around from the Bootleg Fire. Now, if we look at the forecast for tomorrow, I think they're saying worse air quality tomorrow because the temperatures are getting slightly warmer. So you can see, looking at the forecast for tomorrow, we have this area right around Sacramento that gets into the unhealthy for sensitive groups category, and then this large area over the Bootleg, probably a combination of the Dixie Fire as well, where we see some unhealthy air quality. Overall, if you have to put a positive spin on it, it's not as bad as it was last season, where the entire state of California was basically into that hazardous air quality range. So certainly not the best, but could be worse. Now, if we actually want to see how that air quality is going to be moving, there you can see the Dixie Fire, Beckwourth Complex, and you can see during the afternoon we get a lot more smoke, and most of it is blowing to the northeast as those north or southwest winds really blow some of that smoke up into places like Idaho. And you also notice it's kicking up more smoke because with that increase in wind and the higher temperatures in the afternoon and the lower relative humidity, that's where the fires start burning more actively and pushing off more smoke. Now, there is some good news when it comes to the warnings map. Remember, it wasn't that long ago when all of Washington, all of Oregon, all of California was in excessive heat warnings, and you can see that isn't the case right now. So that's, I would say, great news right there, that we're not seeing large areas of excessive heat warnings or red flags. We do have one red flag here in the very northern parts of California, and I believe there's actually also an air quality warning over the Bootleg Fire, but they're currently not showing that on this map. Overall, though, I would say that's good news. We could be covered in excessive heat warnings and red flags, and we're not, so that shows you that fire weather conditions aren't critical at this time. And I think it really comes down to what we were looking at earlier, where that cooler air has been starting to find its way into the Pacific Northwest. Now, if we look at California specifically, you can see that's a pretty gray warnings map as far as California goes. Was only a few days ago when almost the entire state was covered in that excessive heat warning, so great to see we're back to more normal conditions. Now, with that being said, you can see there are very active fires going on throughout Oregon and California, just given the smoke that's being shown by the satellite imagery here, and the majority of that is coming off of the Bootleg Fire here. So I think that's going to be the first one that we dive into. If we zoom in, I'll remind you that this map shows the fire perimeter, and then these hot spots here are actually heat signatures picked up by satellites in space. So with that being said, the satellites aren't over us the entire time, so some of this data, it may be 24 hours old or not completely accurate because it is coming from a satellite, but for the most part, pretty good idea of where this fire is burning. You can see, based on the Bootleg Fire, this really matches what we were looking at with the winds. The predominant wind direction has been from the southwest, and that makes sense why we see the majority of the active fire growth to the northeast of this fire. You can just imagine some southwest winds blowing in here, taking some of this flame that's within the perimeter, dropping some spot fires outside of the major blaze, and then continuing to lead to more active fire growth. So now I believe this will work. If we click on it, just a quick snapshot, we're up to 227,000 acres for the Bootleg Fire and only 7% containment, which is not the best considering that this one has since July 6th, but it makes sense why we have such minimal containment, because it's just burning over such a large area. There's very critically dry fuels and some rugged terrain throughout this region. So just another snapshot. This is actually a more recent update. It shows 236,000 acres, 7% containment. And this is a great website. If you don't know, I put the link in the description. If you go to INCIWeb, has some great information about our fires. I always like to look at the number of personnel on a fire. Right now we have 1,700 personnel on the Bootleg Fire, and this really shows why the containment is only 7%. There has been some extreme fire behavior with this. There's been the crowning, that's where the fire gets into the trees and then starts actually being a fire above the ground, just moving throughout the trees, running, spotting. That's where it picks up an ember from the major blaze, the wind tosses it forward, it starts a new little fire. You can actually see how that would work. Take some of the fire here, winds blow it over here, starts a new little fire, and then it just continues to grow like that. So this has been a fire with some extreme fire behavior. We've had some pyrocumulus clouds, and just based on the satellite imagery, you can see how much smoke this fire is kicking off. So if we actually want to see how this fire is going to be changing over the next few days, we can look at the temperature, humidity, and winds. That's the three major factors that lead to fire growth. And unfortunately, when it comes to the temperature, we're actually going to be seeing slightly warmer temperatures throughout the next couple of days. Looking at temperature, shows we're going to be getting up to about 81 degrees today. Looking at Saturday, looks like we're going to be warming up to about 87. And then on Sunday, looks like we're going to be at about 87 again. If we look at the humidity, again, the main reason that's important, the drier the airs are, the drier the fuels get, and then the easier it is for this fire to spread. And one thing that's been happening with this fire, especially in the higher elevations, is the humidity values are remaining low overnight, which is allowing for some overnight growth. And then you can see during the day, critically dry relative humidity getting into the teens and even some single digits in our very high elevations. So that's another reason that this fire has been growing as fast as it has. If we look at Saturday, more dry air expected, still relative humidity in the teens, and then Sunday, relative humidity possibly even getting into the single digits as well. Now lastly, I just want to look at the wind gusts, especially this afternoon. You can see we get some calmer winds in the morning, but as we get into the afternoon hours, that's when those winds start kicking up, getting over 30 miles per hour at some times before calming down again during the nighttime hours. And again, you can see the predominant wind direction is going to drive where this fire is going to be growing over the next 24 hours. Looks like this afternoon we're mostly from the southwest and west. So when it comes to the fire growth, we can expect this eastern edge to certainly grow more than it is right now. So just a snapshot over the next 2 days for the Bootleg Fire. You can see, main thing I noticed for the temperatures, we are getting slightly warmer today than we were yesterday, and then slightly warmer on Saturday than we are today. But again, still not 110 degrees like we were when some of these fires started. So I would say temperature-wise, we're actually looking okay because we're not in the triple digits or anything extreme like that. Now when it comes to the winds, you can see exactly what we were just looking at on that map, where the winds drop down during the nighttime hours. You can see nighttime based on where it's dark shaded on this map, and then they kick up into the afternoon, getting some gusts over 20 miles per hour from about 4 p.m. until usually about 9 p.m. each night. We get those gusts picking up, and then you can also see how dry the relative humidity is, just about 20% and even into the teens in some of our higher elevations throughout the day today. And then tomorrow, it looks like we're actually going to be a little bit drier. So unfortunately, I am predicting more active fire growth for the Beckwourth Complex over the next 2 days. It looks like we're going to be getting a little drier. Those afternoon winds continue, and the temperatures are starting to heat up as well. Now, I usually don't show evacuation maps in these videos because by the time people are watching this, the evacuation warnings might change. But I do want to just show this one because I'm putting the link in the description, and it's actually a great map. You can see where the fire perimeter is, and then you can actually click in here and see the different evacuation warnings that are set. The red means go, leave immediately. Yellow is be set, be prepared to leave. And then green is be ready, be prepared to evacuate, just on a more low risk, just in case this fire continues to spread. And one interesting thing is you notice most of these evacuation warnings are to the east of the fire. So I think they're expecting this fire to move more to the east as well. Now looking back at the satellite imagery, we can also see the Dixie Fire here kicking up a lot of smoke throughout this afternoon. Right now, it's mostly just sitting over the fire because we still have some relatively weak winds, but throughout the day today, those winds should start kicking more to the northeast as the southwest winds start to pick up this afternoon. So if we actually want to zoom in and look at the Dixie Fire, this is the one where I think we should dive in a little bit more to the firefighting operations. You can see the fire right here. I would say the good news for this one, it's still relatively far away from a lot of our major cities like Paradise, Concow, Sterling City. So that's the good news, and it's mostly growing to the north, which is away from those cities like Paradise, Concow, and Sterling City. So that's some good news there. That has been one of the major spots that the firefighters are focusing their attention, trying to get some great containment lines on this west side so that it doesn't spread into these major cities. But I think the coolest, I am going to use that word, the coolest, most interesting firefighting tactics that they've been using on this fire, on the east side here, they've actually been using a firefighting train. This is something I've never actually heard of before this fire. They're using a firefighting train car. I don't even know what you call it, but it's from the Union Pacific Railroad. It can carry 100,000 gallons of water, and they've basically been parking that train on the eastern, or not parking it, but there's a track right on the eastern side of this fire, and they've been using that train to actually keep containment on that eastern edge because the train can just carry such a large amount of water. I imagine it's also carrying in some firefighters to help contain this eastern side of the blaze. So very interesting operations, focusing on the western side to keep it away from the major cities, and using a train on the eastern side, which can carry large amounts of water. So just looking at the Dixie Fire, you can see right now it's about up to 5,000 acres. It is at 7% containment. This is a relatively new fire. Date started just July 14th. So the fact that we're already up to 7% is pretty good considering how new this fire is. And when it comes to the personnel, we have 500 personnel, although I did see one report that more personnel is on the way. We've got 16 crews, 8 helicopters, 46 engines, 17 dozers, 9 water tenders, and even 1 train. Now, I did hear that the smoke level was so high yesterday they weren't able to use some of those aerial operations to drop retardant, but as the winds pick up this afternoon, hopefully we'll see some of that smoke be pushed out of the area so they can use some of the air operations. And if not, like I said, we do have ground operations in the form of that train. Now, when it comes to the temperature, humidity, and winds, I think the big two that have been affecting this fire, when it started, we had some slightly warmer conditions, but I think the big things have been humidity and winds. You can see in the afternoon hours, we're getting relative humidity into the teens, and that means in the highest elevations, we're most likely into the single digits, and then during the nighttime hours, we're not seeing all that great of relative humidity recoveries, staying dry throughout the night that allows some fire growth throughout the nighttime hours. And then again, tomorrow afternoon, we're actually looking even drier than today as the warmer temperatures start to build into the region. Now, when it comes to the wind gusts, this is, at first, you might think wind's always bad for a fire, and for the most part that is true as you get some gusts like this at about 27 miles per hour that will lead to more fire growth, but the direction right now is actually working in our favor. You can see for the most part these winds are blowing to the north and the northeast, so you can see how that is blowing, how that would be blowing the fire away from our cities like Sterling City, Paradise, and Concow. So just looking at that map again of the fire, let's see if we can, that is the Bootleg Fire. Let's see if we can find it again, and right there. Sorry, I have about 50 tabs open. So again, you can see our cities. Most of this fire growth will be to the north and northeast as those winds continue to blow from the south and southwest. So if we just want to do the snapshot of the fire weather conditions over the next 2 days, you can see today slightly warmer than yesterday, and then we are ticking up to 88 degrees on Saturday. But overall, I would say temperature-wise, we're still relatively good, just slightly warmer than average, and we're not in the triple digits, which is great to see. Now, it shows sustained winds about 10 miles per hour, even during some of the nighttime hours, slightly comes down, but we do get those gusts, especially in the higher elevations where we see 25 to 30 mile per hour gusts, but again, the direction is working in our favor. What I think is the major factor working against us is the relative humidity. Main reason for that, you can see in the afternoon it gets extremely low into the teens, possibly even single digits in some of those higher elevations, and then you notice how it doesn't come up during the nighttime hours. We'd like to see it come up to 70 or 80, but you notice how it stays relatively low just 24 hours a day, which just doesn't allow any great relief for our firefighters. So overall, when it comes to the Dixie Fire here, I would say it will be continuing. We're getting slightly warmer, still extremely dry, but I would say firefighters have been making some great progress on this, and the winds, at least direction-wise right now, are working in our favor. And I think the best thing I could show on the Dixie incident update is structures threatened 0 as of right now. Again, I'll update that if that changes, but right now 0 structures threatened when it comes to the Dixie Fire. And again, that's because of the direction that the wind is blowing, certainly in our favor right now. Now you can also see some of the smoke coming up from the Beckwourth Complex, certainly not as much as we were seeing in past days. That it's calmed down and we've got a large amount of containment on this one over the last few days because the temperatures have come way down as that trough started to move into the Pacific Northwest, but we will zoom in here, check out the Beckwourth Complex. You can see the majority of the growth on this fire, or a lot of the hot spots that you can see, are on this northern edge. But when you compare that one to the Bootleg Fire, if we zoom in here, you can see Bootleg Fire, large amounts of hotspots outside of the fire perimeter. That's one of the key things I look at to see if there's still a lot of active fire growth, when you see new hotspots outside of yesterday's fire perimeter. But if we look at the Beckwourth Complex, most of the hotspots are inside of where it's already burned, although we do still have some spotting occurring on the northern edge here, where we get some of those southerly winds in the afternoons, takes some of those fires burning within the perimeter, drops them outside, starts new little fires, and then we do get some continued growth on that northern edge. I think the northern edge is the key spot that we will continue to see some growth, especially that little finger right there where you see more of those hot spots outside of the perimeter. Now, it makes sense based on that map, looking at where the containment is. You can see containment-wise where that black line is around this fire, that's where the fire is contained. And even around that lake as well, looks like we're contained there. Where the red line is still where we're seeing an uncontained fire perimeter, right on that northern edge where we are seeing more of those hotspots actively. And then you can also see where that green dotted line is. That is where there is forest closure. Not much surprise there, as we will likely see more growth to that northern edge where we see more of that forest closure. Now, when it comes to the numbers for the Beckwourth Complex, you can see this is the first fire for the California 2021 season to reach over 100,000 acres. But like I said, over the last few days, we've had some favorable conditions, at least temperature-wise. The temperatures have come down, so we are up to 68% containment, which is great to see there. There is over 2,400 personnel working on this fire. Just amazing work being done by our firefighters. This is some rugged terrain up there, lots of dry fuel, so they're doing some great work to be able to get that containment up to 68% as fast as they have. You can see yesterday there was 5,000 more acres burned, and I'm expecting more of that will continue over the next 2 days, especially on that northern edge where we've been seeing more of that fire growth and where it's aligning with the predominant wind direction. If we actually want to look at the wind direction getting into this afternoon, you can see most of it coming from the south and southwest. So again, that's what's going to be taking some of those hot spots, leading to possibly some more spotting and some more growth on that northern edge. Although southern edge looking good, almost no hot spots remaining outside of the perimeter there, and that is why we're seeing mostly contained on the entire eastern and southern edge. Great to see there. Now, one other factor that's been leading to some of the fire growth for this one are the dry air, especially in the afternoon hours, where we get down to the single digits, possibly even 12%. That's going to be continuing over the next 2 days, so that's why I am expecting some more fire growth with this one. But again, overall, I'd say we're in a pretty good condition compared to what we were about a week ago with this one, when we had large pyrocumulus clouds and it was growing over 10,000 acres a day. Again, right now up to 100,000 acres. So when it comes to the fire weather snapshot, you can see today slightly warmer than yesterday. Saturday going to be getting up to 88 degrees. Temperature-wise, that is slightly above average, but again, not in the triple digits, so I'd say that's pretty good. The two factors working against us with this fire are the winds in the afternoon. You can see those pick up. That'll lead to some more fire growth on that northern edge, especially in the afternoon hours where you see those gusts of about 20 to 30 miles per hour come in. And then you can also see we have very dry air, especially in the afternoons, getting slightly drier tomorrow. And then we don't have that great recoveries during the nighttime hours. So fire-wise, I would say overall, we're looking a lot better than we were before. That containment number is very encouraging, but we do have those same windy, dry conditions continuing over the next couple days. So I'll keep an eye on this one, although just based on the satellite imagery, you can see much less smoke coming off the Beckwourth Complex right now than we were seeing in the past. So looks like that fire is starting to calm down. again, I think the big ones to watch right now are the Bootleg Fire and the Dixie Fire here in the Paradise area. Now, finally, we'll just take one quick look at some of the other fires that have happened this season and are still currently going on right now. One I want to look at is the River Fire, because we do still have some hot spots with that one. It's right, you can see, it's almost hard to zoom in. That tells you how much smaller it is than the other fires we were talking about. That one is about 10,000 acres, but the reason I'm not focusing on that one right now is because it is up to 51% containment, which is good there. Again, there might still be some evacuation warnings in place. That's something that you can check on the CAL FIRE website or INCIWeb. Both of those usually have great updates on any evacuation warnings. If we look at some of the other fires that have happened this year, Salt Fire, that one is up over 12,000 acres, but that one is nearly wrapped up. We're at 95% containment, not seeing many more hot spots on that one. And then the other two fires that really started this California wildfire season, in my opinion, Lava Fire here by Mount Shasta. That's actually some unbelievable imagery. I believe that's an old volcano, and then you see that large fire perimeter right there. That one did get up to over 26,000 acres, 77% containment right now, but just based on the hotspots, you can see not many hotspots still showing up on this fire, so that's the reason I didn't focus on that one today. And then also the TennantFire up here, that one is now over 10,000 acres, but that one is officially wrapped up, 100% containment. Great to see there. So again, just the three main fires that we're talking about today. We have the Bootleg Fire up here in Oregon. That is the one where I think we're going to see the most fire growth and continued extreme fire behavior, especially on that eastern side where you can see large amounts of hotspots. Again, large amount of evacuation warnings in place. You can see the link in the description for that. That one is over 200,000 acres with 7% containment. That is the reason I think that is the main one to focus on over the next few days. But I'm also going to be keeping my eye on the Dixie Fire, which is near Paradise and Concow. Keeping an eye on this one because, again, you never want to not be worried about a fire in this area. This is a place where we have a lot of dry fuels, but you can see we are starting to already get some containment. Firefighters have some great strategy both on the western side and the eastern side, using lines to protect the higher populated cities, using a train to protect the eastern side, and then the winds are predominantly blowing from the southwest, so moving this fire in the right direction. But certainly we'll keep an eye on that one. Right now it's about 8,000 acres with 7% containment. And then the last one that we really dove into was the Beckwourth Complex. Zooming in there, you can see most of those hotspots on the northern edge, expecting to see more growth throughout the northern edge over the next couple days. Although based on the containment, we're looking relatively great with the Beckwourth Complex, up to 68% containment, although that is the first California wildfire to reach over 100,000 acres this season. So I'll be sure to continue all these updates as this season continues. Sorry I haven't been doing these daily updates recently. I've been really focusing on my wildfire research at San Jose State, trying to wrap up my master's thesis. And then I've also actually been a broadcast meteorologist for KSBW in Salinas. So lots of things to balance, but California wildfire season is certainly getting going at this point, so I'm gonna try my best to start doing these videos hopefully daily, if not at least a few times a week, so that we can stay updated on all these various fires going on. So I hope this video is helpful, and thanks for watching.